Happy Halloween, you ghouls. Today is Halloween, and I am doing a special episode on the main podcast. This is episode 21 of Ace for Waves, which I'll be the first to admit. Quite some time has passed between the 20 and 21st episodes. I am trying to figure out the algorithm of how I want my main podcast episodes to be formatted and distributed, which is why there hasn't been a main episode recorded or posted. Once I figure that out, I'll hopefully be more consistent. But because it is Halloween, I wanted to make a scary episode. And what better way to do that than reading some scary short stories from the internet? These stories do come from Reddit, and I will have links to these stories in the description so you can check them out if you want. Before I start, however, there will be some trigger warnings for this episode. You can read the trigger warnings in the description, and I will also try to include them in the timestamps. If you get scared or frightened easily or don't like disturbing topics all that much, I advise you not to watch this episode or watch it with caution or find something else to watch. I have plenty of other content on my YouTube channel, or there's also lots of stuff on YouTube as well to go watch or listen to. But as just again, trigger warning, there will be trigger warnings here. I'm going to do my best to either put them in the timestamps. If I forget to do that somehow, they will be in the description below so you can read at your own risk and with caution. But now that we've got that all out of the way, it's time for some scary stories. This first story from Reddit is called My Husband's Girlfriend Became a Tree. You're overreacting. Those are the words my husband said to me as he reconnected with his first serious girlfriend, Marianne. She had cancer, terminal, dead in a couple weeks terminal. She was only 36, and she never had a serious romance after my husband. At the end of your life, I guess it's natural to wonder what could have been. She wanted to reconnect with my husband, spend her final moments with him. It would be cruel not to see her. I could tell my husband was also pondering the what could have beens. I thought my saving grace was that the doctors were correct. Sure enough, she passed after a month. But it turned out she had a dying wish. My husband spent money we didn't have on a monstrosity of a maple tree, spread her ashes in the giant hole they dug up when they planted it, a monument to my husband's infidelity. Worse, my husband was talking to the tree. It started out small, insignificant. He would come out in the morning and say a few words, as if praying for her. He would put his hand on the tree with a tenderness I desperately wished he'd show me. Before long, he was having conversations with the tree, long, deep stay up till 3 in the morning conversations. He was buying romance books he'd never shown any interest in, and intimately reading out loud to the tree. He was laughing, hard, more than he'd ever laughed with me, with a freaking tree. I had to confront him. What are you even doing out there all day? His face constricted. He was hiding something. I'm not supposed to tell you. Don't make me say it. Say what? I'm your wife, Dave. Please don't keep secrets from me. It's Marianne. She's alive. We went to her funeral. Don't you remember? You dragged me there. You spread her ashes. No, she's alive. She's alive again in the tree. What am I supposed to say to that? I mean, do you hear yourself? I know how it sounds. It's real. She's in there. She's been speaking to me. I quickly regretted bringing it up. Once he started, he couldn't stop talking about it. He told me there's a whole other world once you die, and it's beautiful and nothing hurts, and that's where Marianne is. Something out of a fairy tale, all around us. And it's perfect. Marianne couldn't stop talking about how perfect it was. It went on and on like that for about a month, until one morning I saw the note. Burn my ashes in the roots of a maple tree, planted next to Marianne. He had hung himself from her branches. Before I called the police, I made sure to remove the walkie-talkie I had hidden in the hollow of the tree. After the authorities collected his body, I got a chainsaw from the garage. Tonight, I'm going to have a bonfire, a freaking big one. Whoa, that was an intense first story. Um, I like stories like that. I mean, there's some very like heavy themes in that and topics such as, suicide and death. But that's kind of like my scary short story where it starts off, kind of mysterious, and then at the end there's like this big bombshell of a moment. I like that in books. You could say that's kind of like the climax of the book, or if you're thinking like movie-esque stuff, like the climax of the movie. That's what this first story felt like. Felt like the climax, but instead of like in the middle, it happened at the end. So there's story number one. Our second story comes from the username Norman Crane, and it's titled Leaves of One Tree. So we're sticking to the tree theme. 21 people attended my 12th birthday party. Family, friends. I received 22 gifts, 21 from the 21 people there, and one from somebody somewhere else. It lay in a box on my bed in the evening after everyone but my parents had left. Inside, on a cushion of blue velvet, was a pure black puzzle piece. Beside it, a note. This is the first piece of doubt. The next morning, I noticed a matching puzzle piece shaped darkness in my vision. Or at least I initially thought it was in my vision because everywhere I looked, there it was, a darkness, a void. The eye doctor examined me, but found nothing wrong with my eyes. My parents didn't know who'd left the box in my room. The void was always there, more visible during the day, but equally present at night. And after a few weeks, I started noticing movement in it, behind it. On my 13th birthday, I was sick, so there was no birthday party. I received presents from my parents, then returned to my bedroom, where a second box was waiting, wrapped exactly like the first one, containing a differently shaped pure black puzzle piece, and a note which said, "This is the second piece of doubt." In the morning, the void in my vision and what I increasingly I felt was reality itself has doubled in size. The two pieces had fit together. Now I could see deeper into it, motion, slithering. Everywhere I looked, at faces, at myself in the mirror, at the landscape, at my cell phone screen, reality minus the double puzzle piece shaped void. At 14, I received my third piece of doubt, and a few months later witnessed the first tentacle, writhing, moist, finding that expanded void and pushing itself through like a blind muscle. It made me freeze. The void talking to anyone made talking to anyone difficult. It was a distraction. I couldn't learn or focus on anything but the void. Yet I knew that it was the void teaching me, instructing me, stripping away the falseness of reality, which itself is a distraction from the void. I have accumulated 9 pieces of doubt now. I have not only seen the tentacles, but fractions of the volume of to what they belong and what it means. Penetrate our world. Coldness, my God. Almost, almost it has entered fully. The Wiener is cracked. I estimate that by my 26th birthday, the void will be large enough. And the one who has been sending me the presents, I have met him. I swear to you, I have met him on the bus. He is a janitor. He worked once at my elementary school. We are all leaves, he said to me, leaves of one tree. There are dozens of us, insignificant human remnants of the great old ones, scattered about the earth like dust, like refuse, blown about by the winds, yet cold inside, so inhumanly cold. If you were somehow to extract our hearts, we would not cease to live, if alive is even what we are, or what we ever were. So that's our second story there. Not quite as intense as the first story, but I think the second story gives us like a lot to think about in terms of what happens, after we may die or what happens in the afterlife. That's kind of the themes that I gathered from this story, at least. And it is something kind of to ponder. And it can be scary for some people to think about what happens after you die. I don't want to bring religion into this because I'm not qualified or an expert enough to speak on the different types of religions when I don't know or familiar with most of them. So I don't want to spread false information about there, but I'm sure that different types of religions believe in different things of where you go after you die, whether that be, the afterlife, whether that be somewhere else. So this is kind of like scary, as in the ways of thinking about what you could possibly be after you die, and maybe like turning into a ghost, turning into an afterthought. Those are scary feelings and scary moments that some people do have a legitimate fear of. And we should normalize kind of those fears with those people. So I'm gonna be staying on this one for a while. That's a good story. But we're gonna move on to our third story. Our third story comes from the user Ms. Menestein, called A Talk Over Drinks. And just a disclaimer, these stories were all found on the subreddit Scary Short Stories, which I'll talk about more at the end. But if you want to check out where these stories are from, again, I'll put links in the description below, so you'll have them there too. But on to the third story. Bill Carson steps through the swinging of doors of a Montana saloon and clumps up the bar. He offers Ellis the pistol on his belt, but Ellis holds up a hand in gentle refusal. No need, Mr. Carson, he says in his clipped and proper English accent. You're not one of my problem customers. I hardly mind if you're armed. He gestures to the empty room. Besides, we're a bit late on customers today. Bill slides onto a bar stool and motions vaguely towards the shelf of liquor behind Ellis. The barkeep sweeps 4 shot glasses smoothly in front of his patron. He pours. Pour heavy, Ellis, Bill grunts. Don't suppose you've seen Mrs. Carson, have you? No, sir, I'm afraid not. The whiskey wells all the way up to the rim of the cups. Word has it that she's been seen with Finnegan as of late. Effin' Irish, Bill says. He's already a little drunk, though he hasn't touched the glasses, and hasn't been in his own stash of booze today. He throws back the first shot. A few dribble down his chin and through the short stubble that has grown there. He is a rough man, Bill, ranked with the smell of cow poop on his boots and old sweat on his shirt. He works the fields as a cattle hand. It is an inglorious and hard job. She may need to be of a correction, Mr. Carson. Not that it's my place to say. The union of a man and his wife is a sacred thing. Bill adjusts himself on the stool. He draws his revolver, a Colt Dragoon, and thumps it into the oiled wood of the bar. It is still unloaded. Ellis smirks slightly. Don't see as she needs correcting, Ellis. Gotta be a better man myself, I suppose. I've been known to chase a little skirt. The second shot goes down. Of course. Ellis is already pouring another shot into one of the empties. Just that. If you don't mind my saying, so you have provided her with a home and an income. It's most improper for her to be seen with Finnegan. Effin' Finnegan, effin' Irish, Bill slurs. He drinks the fresh shot in a gulp. His hand drifts to the handle of the Dragoon half consciously. His finger flexes against the trigger. She's always been ungrateful, wandering eyes. Thoroughly ungrateful, Mr. Carson. Just a little correcting, Billy mumbles. It's unloaded anyway. Just scare him a little. I believe, says Mr. Ellis, that you'll find the chambers quite properly loaded when you need them. And he's right. The revolver is loaded neatly and correctly. A man could be excused for having murder in his veins, Mr. Carson, especially in the current situation. Carson licks his lips. He glances at Ellis. Ellis nods, smiles, pushes the remaining 2 shots toward Bill. Bill drinks, stands, and walks out of the saloon. His gun wags on his hip as he goes. And that's the end of the third story here. Again, not quite as scary as the first one. even not quite as scary as the second one. I think the ending, however, could be up for interpretation. You know, when Ellis pushes the two remaining shots towards Bill and walks out. Or actually, here, Bill Drain stands up, walks out of the saloon with his gun on his hip. So who knows what he is planning? It sounds like he doesn't like the Mrs. Carson all too well. So we don't know what could happen with that. I do like this story too. It's again, like I said, it's not quite as scary as the first two, but it's also up for interpretation, which I'll be quite honest with you. I don't like movies that are up for interpretation or ones that you can come up with your own ending. I know it's different for a lot of people, and you might even like movies that have you come up with your own ending. I like a clean ending. I like a dramatic finish. Maybe I'm thinking of making a video actually talking about some of my favorite movies that I have watched, and you'll definitely see a theme of movies with dramatic and clean endings. But this is also it's also a story where it starts off kind of like small and calm, and then it leads up to the drama, to the tension, like the climax, if you will. So I do like this story too. It's probably not my favorite story that I have read so far, but it is really, really good. So if you like stories that have you come up with your own ending interpretation, I think this is absolutely the story for you. And we're on to our fourth story now. Our fourth story comes from you, Robinson Austin, called Skeleton on the Porch. And this is a little bit of a longer one, so I think we're in for a good treat. Tommy Morgan did not have the best life. Coming from a broken home, the young 11-year-old only experienced the worst. His father would return home drunken like a skunk, and he would get into heated arguments with his wife over money, and how, since he was the bread maker, he could do with his errands what he saw fit. Tommy's mother would do chores around the house, her eyes red from sobbing. Tommy himself would receive whippings from his father for the slightest of offenses. It always came with the hollow assurance that would build character. There were many things that the boy despised, his father being number one on his list. A day never went by in which he dreamed of getting revenge on him, but it was all a fantasy. His father was big and stout. As far as Tommy was concerned, his father was an unconquerable Goliath to his David. Thoughts of running away crossed his mind, but he did not have the heart to abandon his mother to the brute. He later thought he would never be able to get rid of him, at least until that day. One of the few jobs Tommy had in life was Halloween. On that holiday, he could discard his miserable life and become anyone he wanted to be. The candy and decorations were also a plus for him. His father, despite everything else, would be at the very least spruce the house up for All Hallows Eve, with a spider made of old rags and a paper mache ghost there. On a particular day, he brought home a skeleton. The skeleton was roughly his size, being 6'5" in height. It was dry, with some visible cracks around the spines and rib. It was missing a few upper teeth in the back, likely from years of wear and tear. Its hollow eye sockets were jet black and devoid of life. The bones, yellow with age, made a slight thump against the wall anytime Tommy's dad would sweep by the ancient artifact back and forth. It looked like a fragile in his colossal hands. He explained that he got the decoration from an old antique store, bragging about how much he swindled the store owner to get the skeleton cheap. He placed the skeleton in the bench on the porch and returned inside without much thought. Resuming his drinking, once he got into a fight with Tommy's mother, this time over her wanting new curtains, Tommy left the house and sat on the bench with the skeleton. He vented his complaints to the decorative piece, not thinking much about whether he would be heard, but he nevertheless felt at ease talking to someone. From there on out, Tommy found himself loving the skeleton. Each day, he would talk to it, and he would care for it. It's sorry, I had to yawn a little while back. So if you notice my eye kind of twitch just there, just know that I was holding back a yawn and now I finally let it out. So apologies. Back to the story now. Anytime leaves would fall on it, Tommy would blow them off with a leaf blower. When it rained, Tommy covered the skeleton with rags. For a second, he could have sworn that the skeleton was receptive to his acts of kindness. During one instance in which he was gently wiping the skeleton's arm, Tommy heard whistling. From the direction he was looking, it appeared that its teeth were clattering. However, Tommy chalked it up to the wind blowing through the skeleton's mouth. Beyond his days spent with the Halloween decoration, Tommy's life continued as normal. His parents would argue over the tiniest of offenses, and his mother would resume doing chores around the house with tear-streaked eyes. Tommy would continue to receive beatings that his father thinly veiled as discipline. During dinner, Tommy accidentally dropped a glass, causing it to fall on the floor and break into a million pieces. As his father was beating him, there was a sudden thumping coming from the porch. Alarmed, the three paused to listen to the sudden noise. Whatever it was out there paced back and forth on the porch, stomping as hard as its foot would allow. With bated breath, Tommy's father approached the door, opened it, only to see the skeleton in its sitting position. Once more, it was attributed it to being the culprit being the wind. For the next few days, the thumping would continue. The repetition ate away at Tommy's father, spurring him to leave home and remain out for longer hours. In his dreams, he was tormented by the skeleton. He would find himself in bed alone. The skeleton appears at the foot of his bed, and it slides over his body, just coming short of his neck. His dad would wake up with a jolt, and refuse to sleep the rest of the night. However, Tommy's dreams were starkly different. He would receive sweets and other confections, and his father would be far away. The skeleton would stand by, looking at him in the distance. Eventually, Tommy's dad couldn't take anymore, and during a stormy night, he gathered the skeleton and tossed it in the back of his truck with little hesitation. Poor Tommy was awakened from his deep slumber only to see the skeleton that he cherished being driven away. He ran to the door, but the truck bolted to life and butt its way out of the driveway. Heartbroken, Tommy returned to his bedroom and cried himself to sleep. The next day, his father returned, and so did the skeleton. Surprised at first, Tommy was grateful that his friend was back. Even more bizarre, his father was kinder. When Tommy accidentally broke a plate, instead of the whipping he was anticipating, he was given a stern but fair warning about how he could have hurt himself. There was no more argument over money, which meant that his mother was now at peace. Their marriage also improved, and the two seemed more in love with each other than in all the years of their life. However, Tommy couldn't help but notice that his father was acting weird. He moved around as if he were a stranger in his own skin. He would wobble and his knees buckle from the smallest of movements. Sometimes the skin around his face would slide, forcing it to push him back up with his spare hand. His jaw would hang agape as he ate, which translated to shoving food into his mouth at the back of his throat. Tommy learned the truth on Halloween. When he stared at the skeleton on the bench, there was no cracks on the ribs. In fact, instead of being ancient, the skeleton appeared to be fresh and, dare say, even more lifelike than before. It even had a full set of teeth. Shocked, Tommy turned to look at his father, who stared at him for what seemed like an eternity before giving a wink. Oh boy, this story was this was a roller coaster, dare I say. I feel like it had all the points of a good story. You had a beginning, you had a middle, you had an end. You set up the story perfectly. There was some more backstory to this story, I feel like, than any of the other stories. that I've read previously. This was really good. Maybe it felt a bit too long and dragged out in some aspects. Sorry, guys. I don't know why I'm yawning so much today, but as I was saying, I don't. It could have been. It might have felt like a little bit dragged out in some places, but nonetheless, still really. It was. This was really well written, and the piece at the end where the skeleton turned out to be his father the whole time. I don't know if Tommy was just imagining his father giving him those awful beatings or punishing his mother, or maybe the opposite way around. But yeah, this, I think this one was a little intense for me, but still good story. We have one final story here. It's again from the subreddit Scary Stories from Dungeon Marshall. It's called What's in the Cornfield. And I'll say, whenever I hear cornfields or think of cornfields, I think of the movie, Children of the Corn, which is a very scary movie, definitely a horror movie. I would definitely advise to watch at with caution and at your own risk. And let me tell you, it is not a movie for children. But anyway, here's what's the story. What's in the cornfield? Something's hiding out there. I know it. I have a pretty good view of the field from up here in my room. The moon is big and bright, and I can see something moving out there. Well, I can see the stalks of corn moving at least. They're moving like ripples in a lake. What is it? It's big, I think, whatever it is. Whenever they plant corn in that field, it shows up. I always start to notice it around mid July once the corn is good and all. I've never really seen it, but I know it's there. What is it? Sometimes this dang farmhouse gives me the creeps. I don't like living here alone. I really miss having old Blake to keep me company. He was the best dog a guy could have. I wish he hadn't gone out the other night. I'm still not sure how he managed it. I really wish he hadn't gone in the cornfield. What's out there? Whatever it is, I think it only comes out at night. I think it sleeps under the ground during the day. It has to sleep under the ground while it's daylight. Otherwise, I would have seen it when I went to find old Blake the next day. Or worse, it would have seen me. If it had, I might not have fared any better than my poor dog. But what can we do to a German Shepherd so easily? What is it? Nobody believes me, of course, whenever I tell them that there's something in the cornfield by my house. They try to humor me. Still, I can see the reputation on their raised eyebrows and mockery in their patronizing smiles. But there's something out there. Something. What is it? I should just pack my things and move. I'd like to be someplace far away from cornfields, but it's almost time to harvest. It must hibernate after the corn is harvested. I've never seen it in the open field. Next year, they'll plant beans there. I've never seen it in beans either. I suppose I'll stay 1 year longer. Whatever it is, I can hear it. The low wail and chittering clit sound. It sounds downright hellish. I can't handle it. I've gotten close to the window and maybe drown out the sound. What could possibly make this sound like that? What's in the cornfield? What's this? It's come out of the corn. I can see it. What is it? Can it see me? Please don't let it see me. No, it's coming this way. It's climbing the house. Oh, Lord, look at the eyes on it. There, and that's the end of story number 5. Real again, just I think that's an intense story where you can come up with your own ending and your interpretation, much like story 3. I do this story, I will say, this story I think is one of the first stories I've heard in a while where I like to come up with my own interpretation of how it ends, because it could be another human being or a ghost lying in that cornfield who has come alive at night, or the eyes could be that dog who That's gonna be my last yawn. I'm gonna try not to yawn as much anymore, but again, it could be a human, it could be a child. Those eyes could be the dog that he was trying to look for and climbing up, staring back at him. Maybe it's a possessed dog, or it could be an alien. We don't know. So I do like stories where I can come up with my ending for that one, at least, because it's very, very open ended. I think with story three, if there was a bit more clues as to what was going on into the story, so that's why I would have preferred a clearer ending. But with this one, it was pretty much out in the open from the get go that you could kind of guess what happens next. So we had a variety of stories all over the place today. I don't know what my favorite story is out of the five that we've read. I will say that story number four kind of made me think too as I was reading this last story. Story four was long, but it was also very dialogue heavy. And when I say dialogue heavy, I don't mean as like, the narrators and other characters talking to each other. That was more story number three. But story number four, it was, I'm going to go back to the title of it, called Skeleton on the Porch. There was a lot of words and just dialogue, as in, but here's the beginning, here's the middle, kind of, here's the end. We had like the climax of the story, and then boom, it started off scary, then it went calm, and then it went scary again. And now at the end, the man giving him a wink to close. Ooh, that kind of actually gives me a little shivers thinking about it. But I think we had a good variety of stories here. Let me know what your favorite story that I read was. If there's any scarier stories out there, or the scary stories that you have from that you may have heard from either someone else that you may have experienced yourself. I'm not going to go into the whole debate of if ghosts are real. I will say, however, that I am pretty much a skeptic when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I believe anything can happen. Are ghosts real? Maybe. Are ghosts not real? Maybe. So I'm not going to start that debate because I don't want to make the internet mad at me. But feel free to have your own ghost theories out there, or if they're not ghosts, they could be demons too. They could be just any paranormal activities stuff. I do like reading about it and hearing about it. Experiencing it, not quite my thing. But speaking of scary stories, I wanted to really quickly talk about horror movies or scary movies. I do love horror is one of my favorite genres of movies. I don't get scared that easily. There are some classic fears that I am scared of, such as clowns. Weapons is another big one, but I like the horror aspect. And I've always maintained this working at a movie theater, but I attribute horror and the horror genre to that of comedy. I believe it's in the same realm as comedy. If you think of just dark comedy with horror, there could absolutely be funny parts in a horror movie. So it's not all just scary and gore and blood and stuff that we think of when we think of horror and spooky stuff. There can be comedy rooted into that. And horror is just like a branch of comedy that we just don't talk about enough. And you can say the same thing about the comedy genre. There could absolutely be horror aspects in a comedy, but you're just drowning your horror or your trauma out by making jokes and trying to laugh it off and stuff. So I feel like they all belong into the same realm. And maybe that's why I like horror so much, not necessarily for the gore and the, scary and horrible aspects of what people might have to deal with or go through in a movie, but also someone who likes a good plot. In horror, the horror psychological thrillers do a really good job of that, as in driving a plot home, keeping you on your edge, anticipating what's happening next. Similar to a drama, but not quite on that same level. Some of my favorite horror movies include The Silence of the Lambs, which I don't really think is horror as much as a psychological thriller. If you have not seen The Silence of the Lambs, you should absolutely watch it. It is a really good piece of cinema. Anthony Hopkins does an exceptional job in that movie portraying character Hannibal Lecter. It's one of my favorite psychological thrillers to this day, and it's arguably in my top five, one of my top five movies of all time. I really love that movie. The 1960 Psycho is another movie that I really like. It is in black and white, so not necessarily in color like most movies are today. But again, I don't think Psycho is much horror as it is psychological thriller. If you know Psycho, you know the very famous shower scene. That's probably one of the scariest parts of that movie. But again, for the movie that came out in the 60s, is a great piece of cinema. And again, kind of keeps you on the edge of what's going to happen. I haven't seen this movie, but it is a movie on my watch list at some point. It is the Blair Witch Project. That is more horror. I wouldn't consider the Blair Witch Project to be a psychological thriller, but it is horror. It's not based on a true story, but it does kind of follow a documentary style of kids going out to the woods and filming, kind of being like making their own documentary, if you will. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I have not seen the entire movie, but it is up there as movies that I want to watch. I've heard that it's great for kind of like the drama and the horror. And I think it also paints a real life fear instead of, clowns and ghosts or monster stuff. This movie really takes on the point of normalizing the fear of going out in the woods and what could happen out there at night. So if you have seen it, let me know in the comments. Tell me if it's a good movie and if I should watch it or not. But if we're talking also scary movies, I have not seen any of these, but there's The Shining, there's The Conjuring, there's Annabelle, there's It. There's a lot of horror movies out there for everybody. I just named a few. There's plenty more out there. The last scary or horror movie I think I watched was The Silence of the Lambs when I rewatched it. I also started to watch I think it was The Shining, but I didn't get that far into it. I might have to resume and watch it later on when I have time. But let me know some of your favorite horror movies once again in the comments. Give me some recommendations. What horror movies do you like? Do you like horror movies? Do you prefer more psychological thrillers? Or if you don't like horror or scary movies, what genres of movies do you like? And should I watch them? But that wraps up our episode for today. I hope you enjoyed all these scary stories. And if you do like stories like these, once again, you can check them out on the subreddit Scary Short Stories. Or if you really like horror, there is a subreddit called No Sleep that has some really good ones. I didn't read any no sleep stories because some authors require permission first, and I didn't want to break a rule or break a boundary if they explicitly state that they don't want their works read. I gotta respect those people too. But that officially concludes our Halloween episode. Thanks for listening and for watching. If you like my main podcast, I upload videos on YouTube and Spotify. Today, however, I'm only doing video only, but you can check out future episodes on Spotify under the Ace for Waves tag. Season 2 of Bold Predictions is out now on YouTube. That's a weekly segment where I make predictions about the NFL season and see how well I do. I did a behind the scenes look at bold predictions this week, but you can still see my predictions in that video. I was going to make a separate video for that, but I just got busy. So this week's bold predictions is just under the behind the scenes video. So there's still predictions there, and you can check it out if you want. But let me know if there's any topics I should discuss on my main podcast or just in general and on the channel. I'm open to any and all ideas. But for now, that's I'll see you on the next episode.